If you love the Mental Health Warriors podcast, then I have a couple ways for you where you can support the show. The first one is to do the simplest thing of all and tell somebody about it. If you want to share it, on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, it doesn't matter. Just click the share button and let somebody else know about it. And the other one is if there's somebody in your life that you think would love the show and could benefit from the guests that we're talking about, tell them about it. Because the more people that know about it, the more people we can help, and that's what it's all about. The second thing you can do is go over to patreon.com/mentalhealthwarriors and support the show there. And it's not just your support, it's a value exchange. So for your support, you will get something in return, and that would help us cover our costs and grow our audience. My episode today is wonderful. It's with Josiah Novak. I freaking love this guy. He was in one of our mastermind groups last year, and the guy is so committed to not only his own personal development, he's committed to helping people, and he is so friggin' fit, and he is a world-class fitness coach. And this conversation was great because it shows that no matter where you're at, no matter how many failures you have, you can overcome them, you can learn from them, and you can keep soldiering on, and you can take yourself to a higher and higher level. We thrive on adversity, whether it's physical adversity or mental or emotional adversity, because when we overcome it, we stand a little taller, we learn something about ourselves, and we have a better set of tools to move forward. So don't shy away from struggle. Embrace it. Embrace it as part of the human condition and part of your journey. Don't judge it as good or bad. Just learn and move forward. And Josiah's story is one that is full of overcoming obstacles, from his childhood to his weight to very serious depression, and then to growing a business and becoming a phenomenon. The guy is absolutely fit. He is, as I said before, literally a world-class coach. Like when I watch what this guy is doing, he is incredible. And we talk a lot about this episode. In this episode, we talk a lot about fitness and mental health and how those two things are related to each other. It's surprising to me how many guys ask me, hey, do you think there's a relationship between working out and like being fit and my mental and emotional health? Yeah, probably. There probably is. Like 100% for sure. Of course there is. You cannot be of healthy mind without being of healthy body, and vice versa. We are one giant complicated system, and everything works together. And Josiah gets into this in the podcast, but he's a huge believer in this. So let me tell you about Josiah. So he's a husband and dad who happens to have a passion for helping people achieve their ultimate life dreams through the power of health and fitness. He started the TrueTransformation.com project to help busy professionals and parents permanently change their health and fitness habits and routines. He hosts the Fit Man Project podcast, by the way, which I've been on, and he is an exceptional interview. You can find that on iTunes, and he has helped thousands through his True 8 Body Transformation program. He currently resides in Northern Virginia with his wife, Michelle, and their two young boys, Jaxson and Cameron. Hey, my nephew's name is Jaxson. You can learn more about Josiah's transformation program by visiting thetruetransformation.com/January-transformation, and we'll have that link in the show notes page. But listen, thanks, Josiah, for being on the podcast, man, and thanks for inspiring me, because I love what you're doing. Your posts are articulate, they're to the point, they are super clear, there's no bullshit, and your community is growing very quickly, and you're an amazing podcast host, and I can say that from personal experience. Inspirational to me. So guys, enjoy the episode, and we'll see you on the other side.
Warriors are not born. Warriors are forged in the crucible of adversity. Warriors without fear are warriors without courage. We are men, destroying stigma and stereotypes. We are a band of brothers, because in brotherhood, there is strength. Our weapons are strength, empathy, and honesty. We are mental health warriors, and this is our voice.
Hey, Josiah, welcome to the Mental Health Warriors podcast.
Jason, dude, we finally made this thing happen. Thanks so much for having me.
We did, and I don't know if you noticed, we were just talking before I hit record, and I noticed as soon as I hit record, my voice drops an octave or two, and that's just how it needs to be.
Yeah, it's like your bedroom voice, right?
Yeah. Hello, Josiah. So,
That's a
I'm really
perfect
excited.
podcast guest, man. I gotta adopt that.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, by the way, this podcast is not what you thought it was about. So, anyways, man, it's great to have you here. I know we've been trying to set this up for a little while. So, why don't you, let's get started because you are super active in the, health and fitness industry, and you're just building this incredible empire and inspiring people all over the world. But your backstory, I think, is really important because in the people I talk to, and the people in Mental Health Warriors group, and just dudes I talk to, mostly around the world, one of the questions I hear quite a bit is, and it blows my mind, but it's how, does it matter if I work out, for example, or, how much does food and nutrition have to do with mental health? And so a lot of times guys are struggling and they're, but they're not doing some of the very fundamental things that they need to in order to, create that whole well-fit human being that is more able to heal, I guess. So, but you've gotten to this point where you are helping people, just so many people, but man, it's your backstory. You've come from a pretty tough place at different times in your life. So maybe we could start at the beginning and just tell us, where a little bit about where you came from, your background, some of the struggles you faced, and just stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell people health and fitness was a life savior in many different aspects, both mentally and physically for me. Growing up, I was a pretty active kid, but I was in a very unhealthy family situation where I was a victim of abuse as a kid, and both physically and mentally from my parents, but specifically my father. It was kind of an interesting dynamic. My dad was a big military guy. Big into health and fitness, big into taking care of himself. And of course, just like every other young boy, I wanted to be just like my dad, right? Initially. And I patterned my routine as a young boy with running and doing push-ups and sit-ups after my dad. But after going through quite a few years of getting pushed around and just being verbally attacked and abused and physically pushed around and abused, I kind of made a line in the sand, if you will. I said, I want to, strengthen myself to literally be able to defend myself. Right. And I started going to the gym with one goal in mind, and that was to, get strong enough to be able to kick my dad's ass, basically. And, coupled with that, I struggled in the social environment, right? I think a lot of it had to do with the environment that I had at home, where it was a lot of yelling and screaming. And, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. I'm one of 6 kids. We lived in a very small house. I always shared a room growing up. Never knew any different really until I was about 18 or 17 years old, I would say, when I finally got my own room for about a year. And, so we were a one-income family coupled with, the pretty nasty environment. And I struggled socially because I felt like all my friends had something that I didn't have. And that was just peace, love, understanding, and all the things that I witnessed their parents doing for them, coupled with the materialistic stuff that they would always get because it seemed like everybody else always had more money than us. And so I struggled both at home and out in the world. And I said, where can I start to develop some confidence? Now, I didn't say that as a kid. I didn't go to the gym and walk in there and go, all right, I'm going to start building my self-esteem. I just said, man, this looks cool. I was naturally attracted to the idea of getting stronger, bigger, faster. And, obviously it would help with sports because I played sports growing up. And I said, I'm just going to start going to the gym every day. That's going to be like my after practice, after school activity. And I'm going to get bigger. I'm going to get stronger. And I remember it was like a defining moment. I think I was going into my junior year in high school, and a buddy of mine who was about a year older than me, I say buddy of mine, he wasn't really a friend because he told me, he's like, look, man, you're moving up into varsity sports, and you need to be bigger because everybody is bigger than you. Right. And coupled with the idea that, man, my dad is, pushing me around and kicking my ass, and then everybody at school is stronger and bigger than me. I got to start doing this thing, man. So that was kind of how I got into the fitness groove, I quickly fell in love with it. My parents split when I was 13, and I spent some time with my dad and mom and kind of back and forth. And eventually it was just my mom once I was about 16 years old. But fitness was kind of the cornerstone, and it was my place of refuge, man. I mean, I would go there and just feel alive. And that was how it all started. There's been many steps on the journey, but that's what got me into it and really helped me fall in love with the idea of just taking care of myself, bettering myself, and having the power to do so. Built my confidence, man. My body started to change. I started to get compliments from girls, which is always nice.
Absolutely.
And, my dad, I remember making comments about me like, man, your arms are getting bigger. And I would, we didn't spend a lot of time together after I was about 16. And, I remember the small times that we did have where we would have some fights and whatnot. It never got physical again. I think it was just because my dad started to realize that, wow, this kid's no longer just a little kid that I can push around and that kind of stuff. But yeah, man, I mean, it's been quite a journey, but that was really how it all kicked off.
Well, so do you remember, one thing I'm always interested in is when we grow up in an environment and it's sort of the only thing that we know, there's typically a moment, I guess, when, as a young person, you step back and you realize that this isn't normal and this isn't what I see that my friends are going through. Do you remember some of the moments that you had when you realized that your home life was different than maybe some of the people you hung around with or went to school with?
Oh, every time there was a holiday or birthday or anything of that nature where there was a celebration and I saw people come together and be happy and just feel really just genuine, right, about the emotion that they were experiencing. It felt different. It just felt different than what I was accustomed to. I think a lot of it, and I hate to talk about money as being a big deal, but I feel like a lot of it had to do with just this idea that, and maybe it was due to the fact that my parents were constantly reminding us that we didn't have any money. It was like, no, we can't do that. We don't have any money. No. And there was a fight, between my parents, or I witnessed my parents arguing about Christmas gifts. And, it was just a nasty kind of emotional swing that I would always go through. And so whenever I would be a part of a friend's celebration, whether it was a holiday or event or party or whatever it might have been, I just noticed that everybody seemed to really just love each other. It had nothing to do with materialistic stuff, I guess, at certain points, but it was really just this whole thing of, wow, these people are healthy and happy, and something is just different, man. It felt different.
Yeah, that's interesting. Another thing I'm interested in too is that we take what we learn, or we take our experiences and we carry them into our relationships going forward. So if I look at myself, for example, I was very fortunate. I had a very stable home. I mean, there wasn't a lot of, I would say, love expressed. And I always feel like I know my mom listens to these podcasts. I love you. You guys were great parents. So, I've said that 15 times so far, but regardless, there wasn't a lot of emotional, because of their backgrounds. I don't fault them for it at all, but there wasn't a lot of emotional expressions of love or physical touch or anything like that. But it was very stable, and I never really worried about them breaking up or divorcing or anything like that. And my dad was. They were also very active, involved parents, which was great. But so I took this idea of what it meant to be a man, which was, from what I learned from my dad, which was, logical and not very emotional and all that. And I really took that into my relationships because it was the only thing I really knew. And that caused me some issues, I would say. I mean, I've been really open about all that kind of stuff, but and it took me a long time to, I don't want to say overcome it, but just learn that there was another alternative, where you could be more open and vulnerable and authentic and all that kind of stuff. So with your background and the things that you experienced, I mean, did you carry that into your relationships as a young man and even into your, I guess, young adulthood or whatever? And how did you, or how have you, sort of worked to overcome that and create something different?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I definitely did. Early on, in early relationships where I was just kind of venturing into the dating world, I was very unhealthy, mostly on my part. I was quick to anger, quick to, jealousy, very insecure. I think a lot of that was from those early days of just feeling different, right? Feeling like I was indifferent in a bad way,
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that it took me a long time and a lot of, self-reflection. I also think just growing outside of relationships, whether it was career or personal development, and just learning and falling in love with building a business or a passion, I think gave me more confidence when it came to relationships. But, it's been interesting because now that I'm a father and I've been married for a few years, I still struggle, and I say struggle, but I think we all struggle with different things. I think for me, my struggles now are around just continuing to check myself and make sure that I'm not happy with progress, and I'm not settling for being just good enough, and always just trying to make sure that I'm reflecting on, is my behavior better than I want it to be? Is it worse than I want it to be? Is it still venturing back to those old days and those old habits of chaos and yelling and screaming? And I would say, my family now is way different than it was growing up, right? And so we've made a lot of progress and things are great, but there are still moments where, I think one of the big things that I've noticed about myself is that, growing up, there was always yelling, there was always screaming. I mean, it's 6 kids, 2 adults who didn't love each other, physical abuse. I mean, it was like a zoo, right? And so for me, I developed this desire to just be alone, right? And, kind of get into seclusion and move away from the chaos and noise and all this stuff and just find quiet time and peace. And that was one of the reasons why I went to the gym all the time. And so, now that I have a family who loves me and truly wants me around and all this stuff, I do find that at times, I have to remind myself that I shouldn't just isolate myself all the time. I shouldn't, go into seclusion or go to the gym too much and, hide away from, things that need to be addressed. I think it's important to spend time with the people that you love. And it's just, a habit that I've had to work on. And so, yeah, man, I mean, it does leak into your future relationships for sure. It's something that it's just about, for me, it's been about self-awareness and really just making sure I have these checkpoints and these things that I'm addressing, all the time.
Isn't it funny how sometimes what I struggle with, I think, is trying to balance like all the fucking navel gazing I do with just accepting me for who I actually am, So I'm always looking at this. It's funny. I had this podcast, actually the last one I released last week, and it was about this guy who wrote a book called Driven. And he's a anthropologist, geneticist, psychologist, and it's this whole idea that there's about 10% of the population that is genetically wired to be different, right? To be driven, and some of these characteristics of people, you might hear echoes of yourself in what I'm about to say, but it's like nothing is ever good enough, that the grass is always greener on the other side. Like you look at these people's resumes and they jump from job to job to job. When they're focused on something, they go completely down the rabbit hole, but oftentimes they can, a lot of times they're labeled as OCD, ADD, sometimes they have addictions, but they can have spectacular successes and spectacular flameouts. And, and I was listening, I read the book and I was having this podcast and I was like, oh my God, man, you are describing me to a T. But what he was saying was that there's also so much shame in these people because they don't fit in and they feel like there's something wrong with them and they don't understand themselves. And accepting who you are and then working within, accepting that you are wired this way and then putting structure around your life to maximize your ability to, or maximize your capabilities, I guess, is really important. And so I'm thinking about that. And I think, I wonder how much time I should spend thinking about how to improve versus just accepting this is a part of who I am. And so for example, I like to work out alone. Like I hate working out with other people. I don't even know why, and sometimes I wonder about that. Like basically, am I isolating myself? And I get all like reflective about it. But sometimes I think, oh, shut the fuck up, man, and just accept yourself for who you are. I like working out alone. So what? Why do I keep judging it? Why do I keep trying to see if this is a problem? You know what I mean?
Totally, man. Yeah, no, I struggle with the same things. It's funny you bring those things up. Everything you just mentioned are things that, whether I struggle with it now or have it at some point. It's all characteristics of somebody who is driven for sure. And I think that accepting myself for who I am There's been moments where, for example, like I brought up the whole isolation thing and just liking to be alone. That's healthy in a lot of ways, right? I mean, for me, I have to have that time. I need to separate myself from my kids and my wife. And it sounds terrible, but I do it just for periods of time, not long periods of time. It might just be an hour here and there, or whatever. And so it's just so that I can fully engage and be, the guy that I want to be and the man I want to be for the people that love me and need me. Right. And so, instead of beating myself up and being like, oh man, why am I such a weirdo? Like, why do I need an hour in the gym by myself? Or why do I need to go read a book, while I'm on the toilet or whatever by myself for an hour? It's just because it's who you are. Right. I mean, and you're right. You have to, there is moments where you need to go, okay, I need to improve certain things about myself and I need to work on it. But at some point I do need to just say, dude, this is just me, man. Like, fucking hate it or love it. Like, this is me,
Yeah, for sure. So I know I've seen you post online some pictures at various at some point in your life when you were pretty quite large, let's say, not fit, but quite large. So you started working out as a young man, and you started to notice these changes. But what happened at that phase of your life? I don't know how old you actually were in that picture, but at some point you obviously kind of went off the rails a little bit and gained a whole bunch of weight before you transitioned to the guy you are today. So what happened during that point in your life?
Yeah, so the journey started when I was, in high school, working out and everything, and then I transitioned into college where I played sports for a couple of years, and then when I was done playing sports, I was kind of left with a lot of free time, just going to class, partying and stuff, and there was something missing. Biggest thing for me was I didn't really have a job, right? My job had always been, odd end jobs, mowing lawns and working, as I think I was a waiter in high school for about a year. And I realized, man, now I need to go and find a job because I'm not playing sports. There's like an extra 4 or 5 hours a day of my life that is open. Coupled with that, I was really starting to hit a wall when it came to addressing the emotional and mental issues that I had from my upbringing, right? And so I felt very lost going into my second year of college. I felt just kind of like everybody had it all together, right? Except for me. It was once again that insecurity. I looked around and a lot of my friends were, they're going to become lawyers, or they're going to become doctors, or some of my friends were excellent athletes and they were getting, ready to move to the professional level. And so I was just kind of in this zone of, man, what in the fuck am I going to do with my life? Right? Like, I'm in school. First of all, I'm not someone who can sit in class for hours at a time. I'm very hyperactive. I have a hard time sitting down and listening to someone, especially if it's on a topic that I could give two shits about, right? And so I'm just trying to do the college thing because that's what everybody else is doing. But I really was lost when sports went away. And so, of course, I love to work out. But when I was done playing sports, I realized that, and now looking back, I guess hindsight's 2020, but my activity went from pretty high to very low, right? And so I started filling that time with, jobs here and there, and then partying, drinking, eating. And when I was done with college, my eating habits and my drinking habits and my recreational drug habits were just terrible. And so I slowly over the years started to gain weight. Now, it wasn't noticeable, at first. I didn't wake up one day, like 2 days later, and go, oh my God, I've gained 100 pounds. What the hell just happened? But it was more of like a steady gain. Every year it was 10 pounds, 15 pounds. And then when I moved up to Washington, D.C. after college, and I was working as a personal trainer. And then I got out of that when I realized I couldn't do that corporate personal trainer life. And I moved into starting my own financial planning business because it was, once again, money, right? I wanted to learn about money. I wanted to, finally get my hands around what it meant to be wealthy and all that stuff and help other people do the same thing while I was learning. And I opened my own practice, but it fucking bombed, dude. Like 2008, 2009 hit right when I was starting. And as a 21, 22-year-old kid. And I had no Rolodex. I had no contacts. I had no trust from people who had money. I was just trying to sell life insurance and small investments here and there to make a living. And I quickly went broke, lost a house that I had invested in. I lost my car. I lost a lot of things because I couldn't pay for them, right? And so all of this was like a perfect storm, and coupled with not addressing my emotional baggage, my mental baggage, where I felt like the world hated me. I felt like I had been dealt a bad hand, and I hadn't really learned how to couple my love for hitting the gym with a love for eating right, and a love for,
Mhm.
sleeping right and taking care of myself. And dude, I woke up in 2000, man, it was 2007, 2008, somewhere in that range. And I was 80 pounds overweight. I was 80 pounds heavier than when I had gone to school in 2003, right? So when I graduated high school 2003 and gone to college, I was about 200 pounds. And I woke up, and now 200 pounds back then, I was a pretty big guy because I played sports and I was just a bigger guy. But I woke up at 280 pounds about 7 or 8 years later. And I looked in the mirror, dude, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was so ashamed. And I don't know how, I guess it was in my mind. I was like, how did this happen? Right. Like,
I can relate to this so much, man.
I'm like, wait a second. I thought I could eat a whole pizza when I was pissed off and be okay, but I guess I can't, and so like, I was depressed, man. I really went into a dark place for about a year, where I was sending out messages to close friends and family that I wanted to end my life, and I was serious about it, right? And I kept making like just enough money to survive with jobs, as I was trying to get my career back on track. And I was just kind of surviving, and then I'd have like a big hit, like, oh man, you got to pay this bill that you've been neglecting, and boom, and then I'd be like, oh man, I hate myself, and I just want to kill myself, and I'm fucking fat, and I feel like shit, and no girls are into me anymore, and what happened to me, and like, it was bad, dude, and it was really, really tough. And so yeah, man, I mean, that was kind of the lowest of the low, and that was really a turning point for sure.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm certainly not laughing at the depression part of it, but the way that we can convince ourselves about or delude ourselves or rationalize our behavior or choose what, how to see things it can be both an incredibly powerful thing, but an incredibly detrimental thing as well. I remember when I think I was in my second year of college too. I think I was in my second year of college for the second time, actually. That's needless to say, I was no rocket scientist, but I gained, so I was lifting weights, and I don't know, I really styled myself, like I fancied myself as a power lifter. I mean, fuck, I was nothing of the sort, but I really thought I was a power lifter. And I would go to McDonald's and I would eat, I remember this. This is one of my most epic meals of all time, actually. But it was McDonald's used to sell pizza way back in the day, and I remember getting a pizza, a supersized fry, and 4 cheeseburgers. Like, that was lunch. So I got up to, I'm like 5'8", 5'9", so I got up to about 217 pounds, I think was my heaviest. And I was doing this job, and I was like, I am fucking huge. Like, I'm basically like a human bull. That's what I was telling myself. And then but I was wearing like the 38-inch waist pair of pants was like tight, and so I like quite tight. And so I was doing a job painting for the summer. And I remember the people weren't home, and I had my shirt off, and I was walking through their house to go to the backyard. And I walked by the bathroom, and there was a mirror in the bathroom, and I walked by and I caught a glimpse of myself. And I actually did this thing where I stopped. I actually walked backwards to go back in front of the mirror. And I looked at myself, and I took my gut and I like swiveled my hips, and my gut kept moving for a significant period of time after I stopped moving my hips. And I was like, holy fuck, I am fat as fuck right now. Like, and I didn't even realize it until that moment. And I was like, holy shit, how did this happen? What am I doing? It was brutal, man. But up until that very moment, I just thought I was huge, like powerful. And you know what I mean? Oh, it's bizarre. So I'm sure, I think a lot of people, I guess the point is that it's almost like a teeter-totter in the sense that our choices have this way of, they all seem so small and they all seem so insignificant in that moment. Oh, it's just a pizza, man. Or it's just a this or just a that. But it's like you walk your way, each decision is a step up the teeter-totter, and all of a sudden the teeter-totter, you get to the middle and it flips over, you know what I mean? And, oh yeah. So I can totally relate, and I can totally empathize with people who are still in the grips. I'm sure you see this all the time, that are playing these mind games with themselves. Right. So, Okay, so you have that moment, and then where does the journey go from there? Because you somehow ended up from where you were at that point to this incredibly fit dude. So what did that journey look like?
Yeah, so I'm sitting there, 80 pounds overweight, wondering what the hell I'm going to do with my life and if it's even worth living. And so a couple things happened actually. So I was on the internet, and there was a guy named Greg Plitt, and he's actually passed away. He passed away a few years ago in a freak accident, but he was this incredibly fit guy. And I don't know how I necessarily stumbled upon him. I was on the computer a lot, just kind of surfing and wasting time trying to, apply for different jobs and just fucking browsing dumb shit to keep my mind, occupied. And so I stumbled upon his website, and I started watching some of the free videos that he had put out. And it was, he was in incredible shape. I mean, this guy was a specimen, just ripped and full of energy, and just, man, he was inspiring. And I started to really just get into the mental side of the stuff that he was talking about, because he really didn't put out a lot of workout and nutrition stuff. It was more like, hey, dude, this is how you need to act as a man, right? This is the mental side of the game, and this is the things you can accomplish. And his story was full of success. He didn't really have too many ups and downs, it seemed like, but just the things he was talking about just were hitting home for me in a big way. And so I started to venture back into somewhat of a routine. It wasn't like, oh, I went back to the gym and I was just like Rocky or anything like that. It was just like, okay, I'm gonna get up, and I don't have much to do on a Saturday morning, so I'm gonna go do 30 minutes of cardio, right? And I started to go back to the gym where I had been a personal trainer when I had first moved up to Washington, D.C. And I bumped into, people I had known back when I was a trainer. And some of the comments they made were, like the nice way of telling me I was fat as shit. They were like, oh man, you've been bulking, huh? You've been packing on some size, you're trying
You've been bulking.
yeah, trying to do bodybuilding or something. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, if you only knew, man, like it took me just an act of God for me to be here right now. So, anyway, so I'm there, and I'm starting to realize that people had looked at me as somebody who was a fitness person, right? Somebody who was a workout guy. And truth be told, I had always loved a couple things. I'd always loved working out. I'd always loved helping people, right? It made me feel like I was meant to do something here. I knew in my mind as a kid, it was kind of weird. I always knew I was meant to do something great, right? It was like this feeling of, man, like, and for a long time, I thought I was going to be a pro athlete. Like I thought that was going to be my ticket out of, the turmoil that I was in as a child. And then when that didn't happen, I thought I was maybe going to be a lawyer. And then when that didn't happen, I thought, well, maybe I'll be like the Wolf of fucking Wall Street, and I'll just sell, financial plans that make people millions of dollars, and I'll be successful. And then that obviously didn't work out. But all through my entire life, once I had started training, fitness had been my rock. It had been something that I always loved to do, and it gave me this just incredible feeling. And then when I started to preach to other people the benefits of working out and coach them and show them as a trainer, it was just another level to that high. And so as I'm sitting there, getting back into a routine, I'm seeing this guy named Greg who's just killing it. And, I'm like, man, I want to fucking do that. I want to be Greg Plitt, right? I want to be the guy that changes his life, right? Puts everything, that's negative to the side and focuses on getting where I need to be. I want to stop being a little bitch, right? And I need to get my life back together. So I also realized, man, I have the ability to influence others, because there's people telling me, man, like, what happened, dude? Like, what? You're the guy, like, man, like you were a trainer, like, what the hell's going on? And so I started just to slowly get back into it. Now, I'm not going to lie to people listening and say it was like a overnight, thing
Mm-hmm.
here. This took many years. I mean, it's been 11 years or so since that whole year went by. So it's been over a decade. But what ended up happening was it was just, first of all, realizing that I needed to change, right? Like realizing that, okay, if I'm not going to kill myself, if I'm, if I'm, to be
Mm-hmm.
frank with you, I wasn't probably brave enough to take my own life, even though I felt like I wanted to. But I said, okay, there's people out there that I can impact. I have a family, siblings that, my younger brother looked up to me in a big way, still does. We're best friends now. And so leaving him behind would have been absolutely selfish. And I have mentors now, even if they don't know me, man. I'm fucking watching your videos, Greg. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're coaching me, man, whether you know it or not, you're coaching me. And so I started to invest in him. I purchased, his like mentorship program. And I started to really fall in love with this whole idea of transforming my body. And that was the catalyst for transforming every other part of my life. And so once I started to really get in better shape, I got a better job. I started to make better money. And God bless it. It was a marketing gig. It was a sales gig. And I started to learn the art of marketing and building a business and selling the business and selling the products and customer service, and what I didn't realize at the time, but it laid the groundwork for the business that I have now. And so, yeah, man, I mean, over the course of probably, I had my ups and downs. I did a bodybuilding show to kind of motivate myself to get in incredible shape. That was somewhat of a mistake, and we can get into that if you want. But it was, I did that, and then I got a couple modeling contracts, which never thought that would happen. So I got to be in a couple magazines for fun, and that was cool. And then I just started to build my online coaching business slowly and surely. I opened the doors in 2014. Excuse me, and I have continued to build it ever since. But yeah, man, I mean, the journey has been quite a difficult one, but just an incredible one, man. But that was kind of where things turned around and how they turned around. And then, I could talk about more, that's gone on since then, but that was really it, man.
That's a great story. Yeah, well, I definitely want to hear the bodybuilding story. But before that, I think one of the things that you said that's important that a lot of people don't realize is when we want to change, or we have this feeling that maybe we want to change something, or we want to profoundly change our life. We don't like where we're at. People always look at the end, this utopian end state, and think, and all of a sudden they just build this mountain right in front of themselves. Like they look at this utopian end state and then they compare it to how far away they are from that state. And they're like, fuck. Forget it, man. It's just too much work. And I think one thing you said is really important is that it was a multi-year, and I mean, obviously it's a lifetime journey, but that you started with, something as simple as going to the gym and doing a half an hour of cardio. And I guess my question is, were there times, I'm sure there were, but times during the initial parts of that journey where those old thought patterns and ways of thinking were like a boat anchor around your neck that you felt like you were dragging along with you? Or was it like, how did your thinking evolve, I guess, as you slowly started to make those changes in your body?
Yeah, I think initially, there was this big push to build a lot of momentum, right? And so I put a lot of things to the side that were important things. Initially, I lost some relationships. I lost some opportunities in business and career because I was so focused on, obtaining this body transformation, because that was like the one thing I felt like I could control. I couldn't control whether I made a ton of money. I couldn't control whether at least I didn't think so at the time. I couldn't control, what people thought of me. I just said, all right, I'm going to change my body no matter what it takes. And so I think initially, I put a lot of effort into it and I was a little bit too extreme. And then what ended up happening was I burnt out, for periods of time during this journey where, I would lose a bunch of weight and then my habits and my routines, I just couldn't keep up with them because they were just way too, unbalanced. And I don't want to sit here and say that balance is even something people should shoot for. I just think that being aware of what's important is really, really valuable. And so I kind of didn't have that for periods of time. And so I would lose, 40, 50, 60 pounds. And then I'd gain back 10, 15. And I'd think to myself, man, what the hell? Like I'm never going to master this shit. I'm never going to become a Jedi of, fitness. I'm all these guys who I'm seeing with success and the body and everything. They're just, they're on something, right? They're taking drugs. They're cheating the system. They were born that way. They have good luck. I have bad luck. And so there were moments, and definitely, and I say moments, but some of these moments lasted, 6 months where I would be like, dude, fuck this. Like I can't do this at the level that I thought I could. And I would lose momentum, but then something would spark, whether it was, oh, maybe there's a new client that wants me to help them, or maybe I saw a change in a performance indicator that I had in the gym, or maybe I'm doing better in other parts of my life. And so, man, I need to keep going with this fitness thing. But yeah, dude, that whole like utopia end state and thinking, man, if I could just, get to this point, I'll be great. But damn, that's going to take, 20 years or whatever. Instead of just living and saying, wow, what a great moment I'm in right now, and being thankful for it and feeling gratitude for just the ability to go after that state that you dream about is a big deal, man. So yeah, there were definitely definitely that whole like going back to the old way and just having to, I mean, really just dig my way out of it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like this fucking snap my fingers and watch Tony Robbins and I'm going to be like back to, on fire. It was like, fuck, man, this might take 4 months of me kicking myself and being like, I can't get back into it. But then I did, and the journey continued.
Yeah, and that's a really important lesson for people because life, that kind of thing, that like, lurching forward, and taking a few steps forward and taking a step back, or having great success and making a mistake, like that never really stops. And so instead of looking at it, I think what people do is they look at it like they look at events that happen, and instead of being, working hard to look at them as nothing more than events that happen, they look at them, they put all these judgments all over them. It's good, it's bad, it's all these things. And I always say, like, this is a pretty recent thing, but like that I've been thinking about, but like there are no good or bad days. There are only days. Everything else is meaning that we ascribe to them, right? And when we take an event like say a quote setback, if you put all this judgment and meaning all around it, well, what you look at it is as like another fucking example of how you failed on this journey of life. And when you're in that fucking headspace, you are not able to learn the lessons from it. Where if you step back and you go, okay, this is just something that happened. What can I learn from it? What incremental improvement can I make as a result of this thing that happened? How can I, in just some small way, continue to optimize my performance in this specific area? Then when you're operating from that headspace, first of all, it's much more realistic. But second of all, you're able to step back and learn the lessons because we all continually fuck up. Like we all make these, or not even, we make these choices that don't create what we want, So what do you do with that? There's a couple different ways to go. So I love, I think it's just a really important lesson that is well beyond fitness. It's just a lesson for life. So I'm glad that you shared that because I really want the audience to take that away. But back to the bodybuilding competition because I don't want to forget that story.
Yeah. So I mean, just a lesson learned, right? I mean, when I was going through the whole fitness transformation and really just getting things in place that would last me a lifetime as far as the lessons that I learned, initially I made a couple mistakes, and one of which was definitely jumping into an extreme approach, right? I think as a person, I have the tendency to go all in, right? When I'm passionate about something. And so I thought to myself, like, what can I really do to, set a goal that's going to push me and take me so far out of my comfort zone, and also give me the result that I'm looking for, which was like the ultimate body at the time. And I thought, looking around, and back then Facebook was really just kind of getting, going. We didn't have Instagram, we didn't have Snapchat. And so like, there weren't all these fitness people out there. I mean, they were out there, but nobody knew of them. The only people I knew were the guys in the magazines, right? So, and most of the guys in the magazines were bodybuilders, like high level competitive fucking juice to the gills, through 250 pounds shredded. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's, I gotta jump into a bodybuilding show if I'm going to look presentable, if I'm going to look like a guy who works out. And so I did, and I actually hired a couple of coaches who will remain nameless because they were the worst coaches on earth, but they gave me like, a bird food diet where it was like water and grass and, some chicken. And being so focused on obtaining a goal for once in my life, I was like, okay, I'm going to follow this thing and I'm going to get on stage. And what ended up happening was I fucked up my metabolism for a good chunk of time where I was eating, probably, and I'm a bigger guy, remembered. And so I jumped on stage at about 195 pounds shredded my first show. And I was, probably eating 1,200 calories a day.
Wow.
For like 3 months and doing cardio and lifting and being a miserable piece of shit, because when you're that low in calorie and you're doing that kind of activity, I mean, you're just so grumpy. And so I did that just for a chunk of time to try to get to this level, just trying to learn the game, right? Like trying to, I'd been a trainer, I'd taken the courses, I'd known all this stuff, but I needed to master this stuff. And I thought that was the answer, but I messed up my metabolism. So what ended up happening after the show was, of course, I went crazy and I started eating, like I was searching high and low for like the best foods. And I packed on like 25 pounds in a week, dude. And I realized, man, like this is not going to work. If I want to keep this weight off, if I want to be lean and jacked and all this stuff 24/7, that's not That's not how you do it. And so it was brutal, man. I mean, I had fun. I actually won my class in bodybuilding, but
Wow.
I came away with a horrible metabolic issue that I had to correct. And it took a while. It took honestly about 18 months of diligent reverse dieting / just getting back into a healthy routine to really just get my metabolism back to working properly. But yeah, dude, it was fun, but it was also brutally brutal.
Wow, that is crazy. Yeah, I have that tendency too, you know, like when I want to make some change, I just get super extreme about it. And it never, for me, it never works out. Like I just like I agree with you when you say there's no such thing as balance, but I need to learn to take a more moderate, sustainable approach. But what I often find myself doing, like, okay, that's it. No carbs. That's it. There's no fucking carbs from here on in. I gained 3 pounds. This is actually what I still do sometimes. Like I am so, like what I do, and this is not, I'm not advocating this at all, but I look at my physical body, it has nothing to do. It probably does to a certain extent, but I really believe it has very little to do to how I project myself to other people. But I use it as a barometer of how much I have my shit together, right? That's like, because it's, if I got my, routines going right, right, like then obviously my body will follow. And I feel like if that isn't the condition or the state I want it to be in, then the other areas of my life will be firing on all cylinders. That's not even true, actually, now that I say it out loud. It's how I tend to look at it. So, if I gain like 3 pounds, I'm like, okay, my wife just laughs at me. I'll be like, yeah, that's it, man. The carbs are out, intermittent fasting, and only water until noon. And then like 3 days later, I just snap, right? And like, so I'm working through that process too all the time. So, so I think that's also a really important lesson for people, is that, you want to take yourself out of your comfort zone, but there's not really, in order to be sustainable, you don't need to take yourself so dramatically out of your comfort zone or do things that, over the long term actually damage your health. That doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think we're all guilty of that in some aspect. We're really good at helping other people, but at times we need to be our own biggest coach, right? I mean, we need to, say, all right, let me coach myself on some of these issues that, I help other people with. And one of them definitely is like not reverting to extreme measures. I mean, it's simply because, you feel like, oh, well, I'm a badass, I can fucking do this shit. I would never recommend this to my clients, but I'm a freak. So I'll just go and, I'm diligent, I'm disciplined, and I'll fast for 72 hours and I'll drink, water and branched chain amino acids only. And like, you're like, wait a second, that's never going to work, dude. Like, you're going to be on Papa John's speed dial here in a few days.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So you start in 2014, you launch your online fitness business. So maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. But how do you, as you start helping people now, you've come out of this, you've learned all these lessons, and you start helping people with their health and fitness. How you help them, like, how is that different from when you did it before, as a much younger guy?
Yeah, man. I think the big difference now, and it's taken, once again, about a decade of just investing in learning, right? I mean, it's constant learning, constant mentorship from top-level coaches and different resources that, have built or helped build what is now my coaching business. But, from comparison to when I first started as a trainer, initially as a trainer, I would just, people would come to me and say, okay, I want to lose some weight. And I would just throw them on a program, right? Like, it's all right, cool. Let's jump in the gym. I'm going to show you, a few workouts, and you'll see me 3 times a week, and you'll do this and that, and boom, that's it, right? When in reality, what the most important piece to helping others is really just investing in an investigation of what they're doing right now, right? Like, what are they doing? And what have they been doing to get to where they are today, right? Because if I look at myself, for an example, I woke up 80 pounds overweight, but it didn't happen overnight, right? Mm-hmm. I've been digging myself into an emotional eating habit and a stress eating habit, and I needed to address those things. I couldn't just start following paleo diet, or it's a keto diet. Like, those things work great for some people, but you need to investigate, how did you get to where you are now, so that you can start to piece together habits and routines that make sense for who you are, right? So, for you, Jason, it could be like, hey, man, I'm trying to get ripped. Awesome. What have you been doing? Well, I've been overeating at night. Okay. No problem. So when are you most hungry? Well, I'm most hungry at night. Okay, it makes sense. That's why you're overeating at night. Are you really hungry early in the day? And you might say, well, to be honest, no. I just think that I thought breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So I have, 1,000 calories for breakfast. Well, that's where we're going to start, right? We're just going to
Mm-hmm.
simply shift some eating habits to your personal preference and where you are today instead of trying to fit you in this box, right? Put you in this like program and diet box or behavioral change box that, everyone's supposed to go through. In reality, everyone's a little different, And so our coaching approach these days is really focusing on a person's lifestyle, and not the lifestyle that they want to get to, because everybody can talk shit, right, and be like, oh, I want to be like this full of energy person who's a grinder and hustler and I'm fucking ripped, and that's a great lifestyle to think about. But what are you doing right now? Like, what's your life right now? Are you stressed? Are you happy with your relationships? Do you have education? Do you understand food? I mean, do you even know what a calorie is? And everybody's journey is at a different place. So we got to meet them where they are. And then we got to start not necessarily trying to change everything about them, which was what I used to do, right? I used to be like, all right, dude, like no carbs or whatever. Like, I mean, whatever dumb shit I was preaching back then. But, now it's like, all right, man, well, it's a matter of maybe, hey, you're a drive-through after work type of guy, right? So I'm going to hit the drive-through. That's your routine. You're going to leave work and you go to Taco Bell or whatever it is. We may not initially try to change your habit of going to Taco Bell. We might say, hey, man, instead of ordering, 6 soft tacos and a quesadilla, why don't we just do a quesadilla, right? Like, let's just start there, because it's so much easier to work with your current habits and just build different routines than it is to try to change everything you're doing and be like, dude, you can't go to Taco Bell anymore. I need you to go home. I need you to cook chicken, which you don't know how to make. And I need you to cook some amazing rice that you don't know how to make. And I need you to like eat 6 meals a day. And like, that's just not, come on. Like, it's not where they are right now. You need to build to that. And so that's really the biggest difference in comparison to how we used to start coaching people. And that's just been because of experience, right? I mean, learning from other great coaches, of course, number one. I mean, I've spent, 6 figures on investing in other coaches and mentors. I continue to learn today. I mean, Jesus, every day is, one of the things we prescribe for myself and then my team is just learn one new thing a day, right? How can we learn one new thing a day that's going to help our clients? Versus back then where I thought just because I read Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, I knew how to fucking train people, right? I mean, that was some great information in there, but it wasn't applicable to most people.
Yeah, that is great advice, because we're only capable of making so much change at any given time. So I think that's a really important evolution. And again, that's been a kind of a thing we've talked about a little bit throughout this podcast, is that it's incremental. And those patterns, those thought patterns and behavioral patterns that you have and that you've been doing for a long time, those are deeply ingrained and they don't change overnight. Like, it's very, very difficult and challenging to change them. But the way you do it is by making incremental changes, having some support, seeing some small results. And, it is a momentum type of thing. So I think that's great advice. One thing, so how do you coach people around mindset? Because that's obviously, or maybe a bit different question is, how important do you see mindset being in helping people create and sustain change? And then how do you coach them as it relates to mindset?
Yeah, I love that. So we have a flagship program, and it's called the True 8. It's an 8-week health and fitness body transformation course that we run every 4 to 6 weeks. And one of the big things when I was creating this program, right, because I looked around and I've been doing coaching for a while, and I said, I want to create something that really puts mindset at the forefront of health and fitness, right? Because our minds are such a powerful thing, whether it's our subconscious or our conscious. We have so much in there that dictates what we do and what we don't do, and the habits and routines that we have, that we really need to focus on our pattern of thinking, right? And we really need to just become more self-aware and self-reflective and be, just as fit mentally as we are physically. So what we do is that, first and foremost, we need to just mentally accept that we have a problem that we're trying to solve, right? And I know people always assume, problem is a negative word, like, what's your problem, dude? But in reality, we all have these these fears or these pain points or these what I call problems that we need to address. And really, it just starts with mentally going, okay, how did I? And it's exploration, right? Of how did I get to where I am right now, and just being honest, right? Honest about it, And most of the time, it's a simple answer, right? It's because I eat too much and I don't move enough, right? And that's what it kind of breaks down to. But why, right? Why do we eat too much? Why do we move very little? And a lot of it has to do with the lifestyle, our jobs, our prior experience, maybe our childhood. And we start to dig into those things so that we mentally can go, okay, I get it, right? I understand why I am where I am today. And mentally, that's a huge thing versus most people, right, who go, I just want a solution, right? I don't even give a fuck what the problem is. I just want a solution. Like, give me my drugs, right? Like, that's it, right? But like, give me, the body that I want. And I tell people two things. I learned this from a great mentor of mine. His name's Jamie. And he said, I could snap my fingers if I could snap my fingers right now and give you the body and business that you've always wanted, millions of dollars and an incredible six-pack, two things are going to happen, right? Number one, you're not going to be able to keep it because you got no idea around, no idea what the problems are, right? Of why you weren't able to get there in the first place. And so you're not gonna be able to keep it because you still have those problems. And then number two, you're not going to appreciate it. And so you're going to lose it because it's not something that you value because you've never worked to get it, right? And so if we don't address the problems first and foremost, which is such a huge deal, like why am I overweight? Why am I stressed? Why am I not getting enough sleep? What's the problem? Then once we know the problem, then we can prescribe it. Just like if I always joke around with people in our 8-week program, I say, look, guys, if I was a doctor, right, and I walked in the room and I just looked at you, right, and I just handed you a prescription, didn't even talk about symptoms, didn't talk about what your history was, what your blood pressure looked like, what your medical disease profile looked like. Like I just said, hey, dude, here's all the drugs you need. See you later. You'd be like, what the fuck? Like this guy is a quack, right? Like this guy just handed me drugs, has no idea what my issues are. But that's what we do to ourselves with this whole health and fitness thing. We go out and we buy a keto diet kit or a program or some, Beachbody DVD, and sorry to crush Beachbody and keto, but, or we go buy bulletproof coffee, which is a whole nother thing. And we're just trying to find a solution, but yet we have no clue what we're trying to prescribe and what the problem is that we're trying to fix. So that's where we start, man. I mean, that's the biggest piece with the coaching aspect. And then obviously there's many more mental pieces from there, but that's really the beginning.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one thing you mentioned that's really important is that if you could snap your fingers and give somebody the body they want, they wouldn't keep it. And that is absolutely true, because I really believe that we benefit so much from adversity and working through it and overcoming it. And, whether it's physical adversity or emotional adversity, there are so many lessons that we learn about ourselves in going through that process. And we emerge from the other side of it stronger. And I think if we looked at it, like, instead of looking at adversity like some sort of thing that's to be avoided at all costs, like I'm too anxious to drive on the highway. Oh, well, we'll give you some anti-anxiety medication. No, fucking start taking baby steps to start learning how to drive on the highway, right? Like you have to, when you are faced with an obstacle, you have two choices. You can retreat from it, or you can find some quick fix, or you can grind your way through it. You can work your way through it and learn about yourself in the process. So when you have to do that with your physical health, it's every day, not literally every day, but you should be doing something every day. And there's going to be days where you don't feel like it. And there's going to be days when it seems hard, but you learn about yourselves in this moment. Why was it hard today? What did I do yesterday that made it hard today? Is there something in my personal relationship with my spouse that made it hard today? Like, there's all of these factors, and you got to continually unpack this stuff. And when you do that, and when you emerge and you overcome this obstacle, whatever it is, man, you value the shit out of that, right? That's just how it works. So I couldn't agree with you more, man.
Yeah, no, you're totally spot on. I think this society that we're in, and it's just, once again, things we've been kind of brainwashed into, going back to the mental side, mental brainwash of looking for quick fix, right? Looking for a drug or a special program or something that's going to cure us of our issues. And in reality, we got to, attack our issues, right? I mean, It's a matter of, instead of, like you said, running away and going, oh man, where's the nearest drug or nearest concoction that can, save me from this thing? Instead being like, all right, I'm going to confront this sucker head on. Why? The highway example you mentioned is perfect. Instead of being like, man, I got to get some anti-anxiety medicine. It's like, all right, why am I scared to drive on the highway? Well, it's because when I was 10, my mom, drove on the highway and got in a car accident. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, like that's normal. That happens. But what we need to do is address, the reality of car accidents. Maybe it's, maybe the statistics show that it's very rare. Maybe it's a matter of, taking a driver's course. Maybe it's a matter of taking a different route, right? Like, why do we always jump to the like quick fix that's only, it might serve to cause more problems long term?
Yeah, for sure. One other thing I want to talk about is that you offer, and something that we're all a participant in various different ways, but we, each of us have communities of people that we, have founded or facilitated or whatever. And I think what happens so often, I mean, I know this happens because I've done this myself. I'm sure you have too. But when we find ourselves in a spot where we don't want to be in, we convince ourselves we're the only person fucked up enough to be in this spot. I'm alone. I've made all these mistakes. I can't ever let anybody find out how much I'm struggling, yada, yada, yada. And then what we do is we isolate ourselves. Or we also have this conditioned belief that, okay, my measure, especially as a man, but as a human being, I just talk to a lot of guys that think this way, is my ability to do things on my own, to overcome this problem on my own, to build a business on my own, to whatever. And what we've all seen like a million times over is just what bullshit that is. And how when you get people together, in a community, whether it's an in-person community or an online community, around a common interest that can support each other, amazing things can happen. So in your community, is it that you're calling it the True Transformation Army, I think right now, what have you seen that people have benefited from as being a member of that community?
Yeah, I mean, the community is such a big piece, and it's a big piece that most people miss out on. They are afraid to, and I totally get it because I've been there. Right, you're afraid to open the curtain, I guess, and reveal you have issues, right? Or you're afraid to admit that maybe you don't know it all because you don't want to be looked at like someone who's less than. And so, yeah, I mean, community is a big deal. It's one of the reasons why CrossFit has been such an epic change. And I'm not a big believer in CrossFit, but I love the fact that they've, created these communities, right? And these groups of people that all just want to get in better shape, right? And the big thing there is just having a place to feel like, okay, these people are in the same journey as me. They might be further ahead, they might be further behind. It all comes down to everybody is trying to get to the same place, right? And so there are other people who are willing to share their struggles and are willing to listen to your struggles, and to be there when you might need a hand, right? To pick you up or to get you out of bed, or to say, hey man, like, did you get your workout done? Or, how was that workout? Did you like it? Yeah, I loved it, man. It was great. Like there's just this whole camaraderie that fuels your mental engine, right? So much. Like, I mean, it's not, I always compare it to, like, I guess it's like working on a car, right? I mean, if you're a NASCAR fan, I'm not necessarily a big NASCAR fan, but you got the driver, right, who's out there on the track and he's doing the damn thing and he's out there cruising, but he's got to go into the pit, right? And he's got his team of like 20 guys or whatever, fueling him up, making sure his tires are where they need to be, checking him, patting him on the back. And then he's got his coach in his ear, like, hey dude, like, make sure you're watching out in the rear view, make sure you're watching for this lap, on this turn or whatever. And there's that community support, which it took me a while to learn, both in my physical journey and my business journey. I mean, even with my marriage, excuse me, it took me a long time to be like, I can't do this on my own, right? Like I know certain parts of my life, I might think I can do it on my own, but I still need mentors. I still need peers, right? Who are in the same journey as me. I still need people I can look to for, support and help. And, like with my business, man, I'm a terrible graphic designer. But for the long time, I tried to do it all on my own, which was fucking the worst. Like, if you do one thing in business, don't ever try to do graphic design on your own. Hire a professional who's an artist who knows what the hell they're doing. Because, man, when I actually hired someone to do it, oh my God, like everything
That's
changed.
what-
And so,
That's when you realized how bad you actually were.
well, that's when I realized, well, wait, I got the 1C I think I ever got was like an art class, right? I'm a very creative person, but artistically, when it comes to drawing and shit, I fucking like my brain and hand just don't like connect, right?
I
And
hear
so, yeah, but it's like a team and community is such a big deal in every part of life. And so, we've tried to take and what we have. We've created a huge community. We have like almost 2,000 people in there now. But like, in our True 8 program in 2017, we'll have helped almost 300 people. But everybody who's gone through that program now shares that bond, right? Of like, man, like we were in the True 8, Savage group or whatever we name them, right? Different groups, but like they have this like support system that they didn't have before. And dude, it's just a side note. What I thought was the coolest thing, I had a bunch of clients that went through one of my programs, and then a couple of them joined like ongoing education that we put out and that kind of stuff. But a couple of them didn't. They were like, all right, we got enough and it was great. But then I found out like a group of like 5 or 6 of them had formed their own group, right? And they were like, like Josiah's like something, right? But they would like didn't tell me. They just formed it, and they were all like supporting each other because they weren't paying for programs anymore. And I was like, dude, that's so fucking cool. Like that's just badass. You know what I mean? That's so epic.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So, well, listen, man, God, I could talk to you forever about this. I know how passionate you are, and I see you online. And for one thing I wanted to ask you. So I met some guys from some of the communities that we're a member of earlier this week. I met Gene, and I don't know if you know Twan, but I met him too. But regardless, I'm sure I'll meet you in person sometime. And I need to ask you this important question. How fucking tall are you? Because every guy I meet, I look like a midget.
Hey, I'm gonna be nice about it. I'm taller than you.
Oh God! I knew it. Okay, well at least I'm emotionally
of giving me your. You gave me your stats earlier in the show. You said I'm 5'7", like whatever, and I mentally was like, oh, cool. I'm like a foot taller than you.
I said 5'9", just so we're clear. Just
well, I'm lying. I'm not a foot taller than you. I'm 6'1", man. I'm 6'1".
At least I'm emotionally prepared for it now. So, okay, well, hey, man, this has been a freaking awesome conversation. So, before we sign off, you want to tell the audience more about what you're up to, how you could help them, and where to find you?
Yeah, well, similar to yourself, I have a lot going on, but the easiest places to connect on pretty much every social platform, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, it's just at Josiah Fitness. So, my name and then fitness. So you can connect with me there, send me a message. I respond to literally every single one. And so do that. And then I also have my own podcast, the Fit Man Project podcast. We put out 2 a week. And we interview just like you do, man. Awesome people. You've been on the show. I think you were like the 3rd or 4th guest on the show a while back.
I was, yeah. It was great. So you actually inspired me. You actually inspired me to start doing a podcast because you were such an amazing interviewer. I was like, oh my God, man, I need to be doing this.
Well, your interviewing skills are amazing, man. So you took the ball and ran with it. So well done. Yeah, it's funny. I was just thinking about our show because one of my team members just uploaded our podcast onto YouTube because we're trying to get every show on YouTube. And I saw that your show was up there. I was like, oh shit, man, that's awesome. So yeah, no, it's great, man. Things are good. But the podcast is there. And then we do have a YouTube. It's just youtube.com/true transform. I think it's the one thing we couldn't get Josiah Fitness for whatever reason. But yeah, man, we have a lot going on. If anybody needs any help, and we have free stuff. If you just go to my website, thetruetransformation.com, I think we have like 3 or 4 free health and fitness guides that you can download based off your needs, absolutely free, and just start getting some help right away. We do a New Year program that we're launching here in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure when this podcast will be out, but it does kick off, I believe, January 8th. So if you're listening and you're interested, we're more than happy to give free help. It's not everybody wants to pay for it, so we totally understand that. But yeah, man, that's it. We got a lot going on, a lot of content. If you need it, it's all there for you.
Awesome, brother. Well, before I sign off, I just want to tell the audience that Josiah is the real deal, man. Like of the people that I know and I see working in this health and fitness space, this guy is at the top of his game. I remember posting something, I think on your Facebook wall or one of your groups the other day, but or a couple months ago. But I remember saying that you are literally like every day you remind me of what an incredibly high level coach you are, and I just can't thank you enough for the value that you are bringing to the world, and you inspire the hell out of me, man. So I just wanted to say thanks for being on the show. And I will continue to be your friend and support you in any way that I can, man. You're doing important work. And it's just been awesome to talk to you and to hear your story.
Dude, thank you so much, man. All I can say is that's humbling, and I'm filled with gratitude. My face is turning red over here. You can't see it, but we'll meet in person, and you can embarrass me, and you'll be able to stand next to me, and we'll do a photo so that we can get our heights really outlined and all that good stuff. And now you're doing incredible work too. You know what, man? Before we go, I will say one thing, and then we can sign off. But the moment where I realized, I knew you were an awesome guy, and I knew your story was incredible, and I'm sure your listeners are fully engaged in your tribe and they love it. But the one tribe member that you have that you may not realize, man, this person is incredibly important to myself and to everybody in my life. But they're a huge fan of yours. So my mom is
really
a huge fan of yours. Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
A couple months back, she was like, yeah, you had a guest on your show. His name was Jason McKinsey, and he's got this other company that he has. She was just telling me all this stuff. And I go, hey, yeah, you really, you listen to his stuff. She's like, oh, he's my favorite show. I was like,
awesome.
Wow, that's awesome, man. So you're kicking ass because you got my mom as a groupie, dude.
Well, you know what? Then I think we better end it there because it can only go downhill from here. So thanks for being on the show, 100%. Brother. And okay, buddy, take care, man.
Hey, yeah, you too, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Hey, cool interview, wasn't it? So I think the story shows you, right, that no matter where you've been, it's not a place you have to stay. Josiah was 280 pounds. He was feeling or having suicidal thoughts, but you know what? He climbed out of that hole. And I think one of the most important messages is that climbing process took years. And I think in some ways it goes on forever, right? We are always climbing, whether it's out of a hole or up a mountain. It doesn't matter. We are constantly moving inch by inch. And it takes a long time. And that's okay. That's not something to run from. That is something to embrace, right? Because we have all kinds of time to continually figure ourselves out and learn how to perform at a higher level and think differently and become more self-aware. So some people see that as a curse, but I see it as a blessing, and I know Josiah does too. So thanks, brother, for being on the show. I loved our conversation, man, and keep doing what you're doing. And you know I'll support you in any way I can. And I'll end this show like I end every single show, and that's by saying, listen, if you're struggling, I want you to know that I have struggled too. And if you ever want to talk to me, I will not judge you. Okay, so please consider, especially around this holiday season, it's a holiday season of 2017, please consider giving somebody else the gift of human connection. Yeah, sure, you can give them a fucking sweater too, but consider giving them the gift of human connection, and you can literally create it with those simple words. I've struggled too. I will not judge you. Until next time, everybody.